From the field to the film room to the war room, we've got you covered every step of the way as the road to the draft starts right now. Welcome to the Chalkboard, my fellow football nerds, for episode number 55 of Chalk Talk, brought to you by the Painted Lines. I'm your host, Shane Half. You can follow me on Twitter at @halfandhalf_TPL. I'm joined today by the best co-host in the game. You've seen him on the Tough Cover Pod. It's Mark Henry Jr. Give him a follow on Twitter at @MarkHenryJr_. Mark, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. I'm excited for this show. There's some guys I love at this position, specifically for the Eagles, obviously, which is something we focus on beyond just the NFL draft in general. So definitely more excited for this show than like offensive line, if I'm being honest. So I think watching the corners and watching the tape and kind of breaking down the numbers and stuff like that, I think this is one of my favorite positions to scout, kind of.
Yep.
Don't diss the offensive line. My favorite episode.
I know you love
done
it.
The entire draft. But we have Cody chiming in on YouTube. He says, let's talk some cornerbacks. That is what we are here to do. But before we do that, I've got to introduce our other co-host. You know him, the godfather of the Painted Lines. It's Dives. Give him a follow on Twitter at Mr. Crockpot. He has been in front of a computer for 3 hours doing various shows, but he's here in the middle of it all to talk cornerbacks with us. Dives, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing well, man. Thanks for having me on again. I agree with Mark. This position is really good. My top 7 bangers. Top 7 are bangers. Probably first round, top of day 2 bangers that I absolutely love. So really fun show here.
Absolutely. So let's dive into it. We're going to be talking about the cornerbacks. I'm trying to figure out why my Twitter did not tweet this because I was going to retweet it, but who cares? I'll retweet Mark's instead. Let's dive right into it. This is our last position ranking prior to the draft. We've been doing this for 2 months now. Started with quarterbacks. We worked our way all the way to corners. So go check out the feed on YouTube, on Apple Podcasts. You can check out all of our archived episodes. Some of it will be dated, like David Jobe being as high as he was pre-injuries and things like that. But we've still got 2 weeks till the draft. It's 2 weeks from tonight. We'll be on a live show. Until then, we're going to do some draft mailbag stuff. We're going to do a big board. If you have draft questions, send them my way on Twitter. And we'll work those into our show. So we've got a lot of content coming for you guys, all leading up to a live first round and second and third round draft show, 2 weeks, Thursday and Friday night. So be sure you join us here on the Painted Line. So let's dive in. Dives, why don't you start us off and tell us about your CB? We're doing 10, by the way. Bonus, last group, we're giving you a bonus 5. It's been 5 at every other position group except for offensive line where we combined it all. We're giving you 10 cornerbacks tonight. Dives, lead us off with your number 10.
All right, hopefully I'm awake by the time this show ends. But my number 10 is Josh Jobe out of Alabama. I think I've got a day 2 grade on this dude. Real quick, positives. I think this guy has really good size. He has really good length, really good wingspan. He's really physical at the point of attack. He's not afraid of contact. He's a physical player. You can see it there in the graphic. Negatives, he doesn't have elite speed. He kind of struggles with technique at times. Josh Jobe, he did have foot surgery back in December, I believe, that left him out of that game against Cincinnati, which was significant. But, this is a guy who's played 24 games the last 2 years. He played 11 of the last 12 games, and he needs to get stronger. But I think this is, one of those like plug and play type of guys that I would be happy with the Eagles getting in that day 2 range. I think he's solid.
All right. And you guys all know when you had a group project in high school, there was always like that one person that just copied everybody else. Well, I don't know who copied who here, but Dives and Mark's top 2 look suspiciously similar. So, Mark, why don't you go ahead and talk about your number 10 guy? Because I don't want to change the graphic.
I also have Josh Jobe, and Dives hit it on the head there with the length. And they thought he was 6'2". I think he measured at 6'1.5" at the combine, but he's a huge top 5 wingspan in the class. 2-year starter, 3-year contributor, 3 picks, 19 passes broken up in his career, 129 tackles, 3 tackles for loss. He did it at the highest level in the SEC at Alabama. He didn't have a great 2021 after a really good 2020. He also missed the postseason with surgery on a turf toe. So there's reasons to be, not that optimistic about him. And I understand why he's a 3rd rounder, maybe a 4th rounder, but I think I'll have him as a late 2nd, early 3rd. But I understand the reasons why he's not going to go in the top 64 picks. But when you have the length that he has, and when you had the production that he has at the highest level in the SEC, it makes me, think twice on pushing down a guy for some of the negatives.
Yeah, Cody's chiming in on YouTube, says, love Jobe, good late day 2 guy. Yeah, you guys in the comments here, let us know what you think about some of these guys. We would love to interact with you guys as we go. So my number 10 is a different guy. It is Zion Mccallum out of Sam Houston State. He had 50 tackles and 3 interceptions last year. He turned in a 10.0 relative athletic score, which means he's literally the most athletic cornerback that's tested in the last 20 years, according to this metric. He ran a 4.33 40 at 6'2", 199 pounds, had a 39.5-inch vert, an 11-foot broad, and a 3.94 short shuttle. This guy is an elite athlete. And when you start to get to the end of day 2 at a position like cornerback, I love to take a swing on an elite athlete. He has elite ball skills. He's got 13 interceptions and 54 pass breakups in 56 collegiate games. So he's got a nose for the ball. He's super athletic. He's not the best in man coverage. He struggles to mirror receivers. His technique's not quite great there. He is an ideal zone corner, in my opinion. His size, his length, his ball skills, they all are at the best when he can keep his eyes on the quarterback and react. He's not the best tackler. He doesn't wrap up very well. I think he is going to be an outside corner for a zone scheme, a zone-heavy team. He could situationally play press man, but you should never have this guy in off-man coverage. If he can get hands on you at the line, he can hang there. But he's not a very good run defender because of his poor tackling ability. Like, he reads and triggers, but he just doesn't make the tackles. This is a guy that I don't think you want to rely on to be a starter in year 1, but he's going to give you special team value, and I think he's got great upside as a developmental outside zone corner. So Zion Mccallum is my CB10. All right.
A lot of people comment about him. So I made a quarterback rankings video, and there's been many comments about your guy.
This is a position where I'll have 15 guys ranked in my top 3 rounds, I think, and I think he'd be one of them where I'll have him probably 11 to 15.
Yeah, and I guess as for where I'd be comfortable taking him late 2nd into any time in the 3rd round. So I'll try to throw that out there as I kind of go through these guys. Okay, Dives, why don't you lead us off here with your number 9?
Yeah, we're gonna go another guy. I think the pattern here, 70% of probably my 10 guys here have good length, and that is Martin Emerson, 6'2", 200. Guy has some of the best length in the class, one of the best at defending the pass. He's only allowed one 25-yard pass catch this past season. His size and frame is really good. He had a really good game in the Egg Bowl against Matt Corral. He was targeted 5 times. He gave up 0 completions. So the big stage, he's not afraid of it. Negatives, he's got an 88.9 quarterback rating when targeted, which isn't elite. So, he did have a good game, but not overall that great. And he's not that shifty. He's not that quick. And he doesn't have that, deep speed. But if you're looking for a guy that can, fill in and rotate across the defensive backfield, I think Martin Emerson's okay. I think there's probably a legit question in play here about this guy, about whether or not he should be a safety moving forward. But I think Martin Emerson's definitely a day 2 prospect.
All right. And this is a spot where Mark and Dives deviate. One of the only spots. So I'm going to jump Mark here, and I'm going to talk about wrong slide. I'm going to talk about the guy that Mark and I both have at number 9, and that is Kobe Bryant out of Cincinnati. Kobe Bryant over his career has put up 25 points a game. He's an 84% free throw shooter, and that's not the right Kobe Bryant, but Kobe Bryant The teammate for a guy we're going to talk about later, Sauce Gardner, had 44 tackles, 2 forced fumbles, 3 interceptions, and 11 passes defended this year. He had a 5.59 relative athletic score, which is not good. He had a very poor shuttle and 3-cone and vertical. So his speed was fine, but the agility drills weren't good. When you watch Cincinnati games, this guy sees a lot of targets because people just eliminated the half of the field that Sauce Gardner was on. I think he's got versatility to play both man and zone. He can press. He can play off coverage. He's got good ball skills, 18 passes defense, 7 interceptions in the last 2 years. He does a really good job when he's not able to get to the ball at just swiping through the receiver's hands. Now, the biggest negative for him is he's an awful tackler. Like, he dives at guys' feet. He doesn't want to square up and hit. And because of that, he's a liability in the run game. Kind of like I talked about with Mccallum, it's not because he doesn't position himself correctly. It's not because he doesn't read and trigger. It's just he's such a bad tackler. And so that's a thing to monitor with Bryant. But I think he's pretty versatile. He's pretty scheme diverse. And another guy I'd feel comfortable taking, back into the second, into the early third round.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat in terms of I have him at the end of the second round, probably in the 60s. You mentioned the reasons that he's very good. 6'1", tall, with long arms. He tested pretty poorly in agility and about average speed-wise at 4.54. But he tested well strength-wise, and he's got an NFL frame. Great at mirroring receivers, 10 interceptions, 5 forced fumbles in college, 2-year team captain at Cincinnati. So this is a leader. Team that they only lost 1 game each year. So he was the team captain of a very good team that was led by its defense. 50 starts in the last 4 years, 45 passes broken up. Elite ball skills, in my opinion, some of the best ball skills of anybody in this class. Great 50-50 ball defender in terms of jump balls. Only gave up 8 yards and 2 catches on 5 targets against Alabama. So this is a guy who I think is being severely underrated by a lot of the mock draft simulators and a lot of the rankings out there that'll have him in the hundreds overall. This is a guy who I would definitely take on in the third round.
All right. And Cody chimes in. He says Bryant is a day 3 guy for him. So he's a little bit lower on Bryant than we are. All right. So that is CB9. Dives, who is your CB8? You're muted.
Dives is good for one of those.
Always.
I love it.
Always.
Dives mutes it. Dives keeps his mic muted. Drink.
Yeah, I'm feeling it right now. Let's do this. There we go. Get some Kyler Gordon action going.
I mean,
there you go. There's Kyler Gordon.
If you fall asleep during the show, I can just have Mark finish your list. You sent me the same one. So.
That wouldn't be the first time. Actually, that wouldn't be the first time. All right. Kyler Gordon has great scheme versatility. He can play outside. He can play inside. He did that at Washington. 89.6 coverage grade, both as an outside corner and in the slot. Very good athleticism. 2-time Bruce Feldman Freaks List member. He's got improved playmaking ability. You look at improved. Literally improved. In 2019, he only had made 4 plays on the ball. 2020, he had just 1 pass deflection. 2021, he had 2 picks and 7 pass deflections. So you'd love to see that curve there. Negatives, I'm not really sure about how much he's going to be starting on the outside. He's probably going to thrive most on the inside. That's not really a negative, but as an Eagles fan, I'm definitely looking for an outside guy. He's not the best tackler. He can get a little out of control in man coverage. His instincts are a work in progress. The flashes are truly there, and he really struggles shedding blocks. So, and he's got some tight hips. So for me, I think this is a rotational guy at the jump. But I could see this guy taken anywhere in that late round 1, early day 2 range. Kyler Gordon, I've seen opinions on him vary even until round 3. So for me, he's definitely probably most likely a day 2 guy, but the talent is there.
He was actually one of the 21 people that was invited to be at the NFL draft.
Oh, wow.
So that's actually a lot of times
that surprised me. I just saw that this evening.
He was the only name on the list that I was like, Matt Corral too, but I think Matt Corral has kind of creeped into being in the back half of that first round just because that's what happened with quarterbacks. But Kyler Gordon, like Dive said, I thought he was very much a fringe first, second round guys. They generally don't try to invite people who they think are going to go in the second round. They try to invite first rounders, and it seems like he's creeping into that, into that range.
Yeah, he was your guy there as well, right, Mark?
Yeah, he was. So I did end up. I'm gonna end up making a slight adjustment. So of course, I think this is the second time. This is like another drink if Mark changes his rankings.
This is the guy that got caught copying, so he changed one answer.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. But Kyler Gordon and Roger Mccreery are my next two guys. So I think that they're both. It's kind of like half a dozen in one hand, 6 in the other. I don't know which way I would go. The reason that I was going to make a slight change was because the RAS for Kyler Gordon at 9.68 is phenomenal. He's definitely a great athlete, 4.52 40, elite agility, elite explosiveness, elite strength, 3-year contributor, pretty bad tackler, not tremendous play recognition there. You can definitely get tricked a little bit. But like Dive said, the versatility is why people are going to like a guy like Kyler Gordon. I don't think you can trust him on an island in man coverage. I think this is probably a slot corner in the long run. So that's definitely what drives him down my list a little bit, even though I think them inviting him to the NFL draft says a lot about where they think he's going to go.
Yeah, I literally, like, if I look at my board, I have rounds 1 through 3 on him. So I'm all over, like, I don't know. But I also didn't know about the invitation, which is really interesting.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to talk about him in a moment. But before I do that, my CB8 is Tariq Woolen out of UTSA. He had 25 tackles, 1 interception, 5 passes defensed this year. He has a 9.71 RAS. This guy ran a 4.26 40 at 6'4", 205 pounds. Like, that's insane. Now, why isn't he the most athletic guy? Well, he had a poor shuttle and 3-cone time. Yeah.
Okay, never mind. I was going to say that I must have saw an outdated thing because I actually had in my notes that he was a 10. So he must have been before the shuttle. Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah. So he had a poor shuttle and 3-cone time. So his agility times were not as good, which you would expect from a 6'4", 200+ pound guy. He played football, track, and basketball in high school. He actually went to UTSA to play wide receiver, which he did for 3 years before he moved to corner in late 2019. So he's relatively new to the position. He's not the best in man coverage. I thought in man coverage, his good reps were when he was able to get hands on a guy at the line of scrimmage and win with press coverage. So you don't want to put him in off man coverage, but I think he's an ideal zone corner. His length and his speed and his lack of agility, I think, make him a fit there better than in man. But he's new to the position. And so because of that, he doesn't necessarily process quickly enough right now. And so I think he's going to be another developmental guy that you're going to bring along, but he's got that elite athleticism that you're betting on. He really struggles when his back is to the quarterback. When he has to flip his hips and run downfield, he loses track of the ball, which is strange for a guy that used to be a receiver. I guess as a receiver, you knew when the ball was coming, though. So he likes to drive downfield on plays in front of him. That's why I think you're going to want this guy in a cover 2 sort of scheme. You're going to want him to play, setting his feet, diving, attacking downhill. He's not going to offer much value in the slot because of that agility. He could potentially offer a lot of value at safety or at outside corner. He's really physical. I don't think he's the best tackler. He definitely does not do a good job fitting the run. That's a place he's going to have to develop, especially if he does get into like a cover 2 zone sort of scheme. But I think the potential is sky high here. Again, this is a guy I'd take, back into the second round. I would take a flyer on just the athleticism alone.
I have him up next at 7, so I guess I can transfer to that. But like I said, I have Mccreery at 6, and I think I now have him at 8, which bumps Woolen up to 6. And, it's all a mess. Eventually, I'll have an official big board that you guys can hold me to. But Tariq Woolen is, how could you not be tantalized by this guy? Just a tremendous athlete at 6'4", which is so rare for a cornerback, for someone to be that tall. It's like Kyle Hamilton at safety, like just a guy being 6'4" as a D-back, just like it makes my eyes pop out of my head kind of. But he's an absolute athletic freak, crazy long field speed, crazy 50-50 ball guy with an incredible 42-inch vertical. He only switched to cornerback 2 years ago. So that's like you said, he was a wide receiver. And, you mentioned something where you said it was surprising that he wasn't able to do something because he was a wide receiver. He wasn't a very good one.
No, he wasn't. I went to look up his stats because I wanted to talk about that. And I was like, well, he had like 200 career receiving yards.
And it's also, I saw a tweet about it. His drop percentage was like outrageous. Like it was like the classic case of like a receiver can't catch, so they made him a cornerback. Like it's pretty funny.
The epitome of dropping an interception, and they're like, that's why he plays defense.
Exactly. No, you're exactly right. That's exactly what he is. But if you're taking Tariq Woolen, like you're not a team. I think that there's probably only like 10 to 15 teams that are going to seriously consider him because he's going to go in the second round due to the traits. And it's got to be a team that doesn't need him to contribute right away. If you're drafting Tariq Woolen, this year is like a redshirt year almost. Like you have to get him in an NFL system. You have to get him learning, what it's like to be a cornerback, since that'll be his third year. It'll basically be like his junior year in college. If he started it as a freshman, like you're definitely behind the 8 ball a little bit, but he's not an old guy. He's also a guy with such insane athleticism, such insane vertical, such insane speed. The things that you'd want in a cornerback, at least the raw traits are all there. So the agility, it's concerning, but with that speed and that physicality and that just athleticism in general, I think that I'd be willing to take a shot on this guy in the top 50 of the draft, just because of, again, how tantalizing it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And Dibes, you had Woolen at 7 as well. Anything you want to add on him?
No, he was, I think, my number 4, my boomer bust draft video. Tariq Woolen, you guys nailed it. He's raw. He's a fun watch, man. When you watch that guy come over the edge, like blitz the quarterback, get into the backfield, it feels like you're watching a linebacker. That's really what it feels like. I agree, Shane. Like, if the ball's not in the air, he looks really good. He looks really good. Unfortunately, he's very raw. It's going to take time for him to develop. He's slow to react. He needs a lot of polish. He doesn't have the best ball skills. I agree, Mark, there. And he struggles to turn his head. He doesn't have good hips. So it's all there. He's one of probably the biggest toolsy guys in this draft, if we're talking like baseball terms. But for me, I definitely see him round 2 100%. Tariq Woolen is a guy that I think a lot of teams will roll the dice on. I think the potential of this guy just being physical at the line of scrimmage and just destroying wide receivers is real. And I would definitely gamble on that.
Does Shane know about the 5-tool prospect?
Probably not.
Term in baseball.
I refuse to talk about anything but football. That Kobe Bryant joke was stretching it.
Mark, great girlfriend, good hips, nice swing.
Moneyball. Oh my god, it's the best sports movie of all time.
I have watched Moneyball. Cody says on YouTube, Woolen's the corner in the draft I have the most uncertainty with. Tough grade for me. 100%. Yeah, he's a tough guy to grade because you got to balance that rawness with the physical tools, and it'll be. I definitely think he's going in the second round.
Yeah, this guy's not just raw; he's Monday Night Raw, if you know what I mean. I mean, this guy's an absolute project for sure. So
is that not the best like sports comment of all time, Mark? Like, good-looking girlfriend, great confidence, great prospect.
Yeah, there's so many quotes in that movie. Oh my god!
If you guys are so inclined, you can donate to the podcast here live on air, so I can afford to hire a better co-host. Okay, let's move it along here. My CB7, which is where I think we're at. It gets a little convoluted on some of these, but my CB7 is Roger Mccreery out of Auburn. This is a guy that was hard for me to place, and I'll talk about why. But first, I'll get to his stats. He had 49 tackles, 1 sack, 1 fumble recovery, and 2 interceptions, and he had 14 passes defense this year. He turned in a 5.48 relative athletic score, and I'll talk about why that is in just a minute. Watching Mccreery, he's really good in press coverage, and he stays on a wide receiver's hip throughout the route. He can also play an off man. He can break with the wide receiver and get his hands on the ball. I thought he displayed good awareness in zone coverage. He attacks the ball like no other. Like, he gets his hands on a lot of passes. He has 30 pass breakups in 3 years. And I think he's a good tackler, partially because he doesn't yield very much separation. So there's almost never yards after the catch to be had. He played inside and outside in college. He's got a safety background as well. The issue with him is he has a first percentile wingspan and arm length. Like, this guy has T-Rex arms. He's got no wingspan. And I think that's going to seriously limit him in the NFL. I think he's going to have to play in the slot. He maybe could play safety. This is not a guy that you can put outside. And the way the NFL is going, you need 3 good cornerbacks because teams are starting to base in 11 personnel. So defenses are starting to base in nickel. You can play him a lot in the slot. I just think it limits how high he can go when he has such physical limitations on what he's going to be able to do. I mean, what are you going to do? You draft this guy he's just going to be your slot. What are you going to do when the other team's got a big guy in the slot? You can't put him there. Do you have to take him off the field? Are you going to let him go outside where he's not very well suited? I just think it's a big limitation for him. So I really struggled with where to place Mccreery. I liked what I saw on tape. The T-Rex arms have me a little worried, though.
Yeah, they have me worried too. It's the next guy I have on my list. I said he's at 6, but I think I have him at 8 now that we're actually finished with it. But the dreadful shuttle, vertical, and broad jump numbers are really concerning, especially when you add in the T-Rex arms. Like you mentioned, this is a guy who's not going to win 50-50 balls. He's just not. This is a guy who's going to make me nervous in the red zone if he's going to have to man up with somebody. And it's a guy who, I don't know if I trust in a deep ball situation. So he's a pretty limited athlete, and it does feel like he's kind of fallen in this draft process. It seems like he was a no doubt first rounder a couple months ago, or at least like 2 months ago. And I don't think he's there anymore. I don't think that he was on that list of people invited either. So I don't think that he's a lock to go in the first round. I think he actually, most of the times in most mocks, he goes in the second round. He played well as an outside corner in the SEC. But in the NFL, his size and lack of athleticism and long field speed would definitely scare me as an outside corner. It kind of reminds me of Kyler Gordon.
We got comments coming in here. Cody says, love Mccreery, would love to see him in a Pats jersey. And then Rufus Rogers said, funny, I hate Mccreery. I would also love to see him on the Pats.
You want to hear something funny? I don't think I hate the Patriots anymore.
They changed. Definitely changed.
I just don't think I care about them. I think they're just like another team in the NFL to me now.
Yeah. I mean, now that Brady's gone and they're not cheating to win Super Bowls every other year, it's easier. It's easier to not hate irrelevant teams.
Yeah, I guess
I shouldn't do that. I'm alienating people.
I've always viewed Belichick. Yeah, I don't think they're irrelevant. I think they went 10-7 with a rookie, or 11-6, whatever they did. But I think that I've always respected Belichick. So I view him like I view Popovich. So like I just I think he's incredible. So I don't hate the Patriots really. I don't have an opinion on them.
Yeah, Mccreery is my number 6.
Yeah, sorry for that deviation.
Are we on number 6? I think we're on number 6.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah, Mccreery is my number 6. I'm not gonna waste that much time, but you look at him. I think he's got pretty good versatility. He's probably going to be on the inside rather than the outside. You guys nailed it. I think he's got really good closing speed. He's a playmaker. He's got the ability to mirror wide receivers. So for me, he's raw. He's raw. I don't know what his ceiling is. This is like one of those picks when I do my mocks for the Philadelphia Eagles, like in that like second round, that I know that, especially what the ones we do when people are voting, that a lot of people are not going to vote for Roger Mccreery, but I think he is okay. I think he's a rotational piece. And I'm not sure how much more than that he is. He's just a little too inconsistent for me, but I still have a day 2 grade on him. I think he's definitely going to be in that round 2 area.
We've got Cody said, I wasn't expecting all of this Patriot slander. You never know what you're going to get on Chalk Talk. You should be around during the season for some of my Kyle Shanahan rants or the tangent that Mark and I went on after the Super Bowl about how it was one of the worst coached games we'd ever watched.
It was.
Okay. Moving on, my number 6, because I think that's where we're at. We've gone off the road. Guys, we've been grinding film and doing these for too long. We're about like as far as we can take this at this point. But my number 6 is Kyler Gordon, and you guys already talked about him. I love Kyler Gordon. I was kind of happy when you guys expanded it to a top 10 because I hated to leave this guy out of my top 5, but now I get to talk about him. So he had 45 tackles, 2 interceptions, 7 passes defense this year, a 9.68 relative athletic score. He ran a 4.52 40, which isn't elite, but it'll work. But his vert, broad, and shuttle and 3-cone were all elite. This guy was a 4-star recruit, and he won all Pac-12 first-team honors in 2021. He has a childhood background of dance and ballet. And I think you see it you see it in like his balance, his agility, his body control on the field. In 2021, in 354 coverage snaps, he gave up 0 touchdowns. At Washington, he played a lot of press bail type of zone coverage. He passes off routes well. He doesn't play with as much anticipation as you would like to see out of a zone corner. He is able to mirror and man really well, though. Dibes and Mark said he wasn't a good tackler. I thought he was a fine tackler. I thought he was an above average tackler. He's active in the run game as a force defender, particularly out of the slot. I mean, Washington's philosophy has always been if you're not tackling, you're not playing. And so he's ready to get his head dirty in the running game. I think he has the length to play outside, and he has the twitchiness to play in the slot. So I think this is a guy, he's totally versatile. You can put him at the boundary, you can put him in the slot, you can put him in man, you can put him in zone. I think Gordon can do a little bit of everything. I was surprised to see him invited to the first round because I don't think he was going to go in the first round, but maybe he does. This is a guy I'd feel really comfortable taking at the top of the second round, though.
Let's stay away from him at 18.
Yeah, not at 18. So let's recap here for the good people at home that are totally lost right now. Our 6 through 10, and then we'll get on to our 1 through 5, which will be a lot more similar. So, Mark and Dibes are the same here, except for Mark's adjusting on the fly. But at 6, they had Roger Mccreery, 7, Tariq Woolen, 8, Kyler Gordon, 9, Kobe Bryant, 10, Josh Jobe. Dibes had Martin Emerson at 9. My 6 through 10 was 6, Kyler Gordon, 7, Roger Mccreery, 8, Tariq Woolen, 9, Kobe Bryant, and 10, Zion Mccallum. So everybody take a deep breath.
But
Mark's changing his whole order again.
McCreary's at 8, which makes me bump McCreery down. It makes me the highest on Woolen and the lowest on McCreery. I want it on record.
I'm just saying right now, if I leave this ranking in like an hour, it's going to be accurate again because Mark will talk himself back into it.
Woolen's the biggest riser there. Like Woolen, I didn't have him on my top 10 cornerback rankings like several months ago. I had no idea who that guy was until the Senior Bowl. And I was like, Tariq Woolen. It's kind of like Jelani Woods. Like, it's fun, man. I love this.
All right, so on to the top 5, where Dibes and Mark are once again identical. But this time, Mark has not told me he's making any changes. So, Mark, this time, why don't you lead us off? Who is your cornerback 5?
My cornerback 5 is a guy that's been mocked to the Eagles very often at a lot of places. Trent McDuffie, cornerback out of Washington, 5'11", 193. Short arm cornerback for sure. He's got T-Rex arms a little bit. Every time I think of short arms, and when I refer to a quarterback, I think of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia when, Danny DeVito's Frankie Short Arms, the boxer, whatever. 4.44 40 for Trent McDuffie, 9.48 RAS. So this is a big-time athlete. I think he's quicker than he is fast. His agility definitely worked out better than his long field speed. He's a 3-year starter who totaled 94 tackles, 2 picks, 8 passes defensed, and 3 forced fumbles in his career at Washington. Lined up in zone a lot because he was on Washington. They play a ton of zone press bail, like you said, Shane. Shane, I have an X's and O's question a little bit for you on Washington since we have two Washington corners here in the top 10. How common is Washington's scheme in the NFL? Because it seems like a lot of people do kind of emphasize how different it is from the rest of the country in college.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to be a zone team and you want to utilize your corners up at the line to disrupt timing, that press bail is pretty common. That said, at the NFL level, at least, it's not as big of an emphasis because zone is typically not trying to disrupt timing routes. And so you're not as concerned with pressing. Of course, the exception being you don't necessarily want to give a free release to a guy like Tariq Hill, even if you're in zone. So it is a little different. It's a good skill to have. You don't see it nearly as much as you do like press man or just like that quarter turn or the half turn zone drops, though.
Yeah, I just thought that was something interesting to bring up, since it's not very often you see two cornerbacks in the top, 5 or 6 at a position and from the same place, and it's not Alabama or Georgia, it's a Washington, and they play a very specific type of coverage. But
and we're going to do it Washington and Cincinnati, which is not what you would expect.
Yeah, that's very true. It is very weird. He is aggressive as a tackler. He definitely struggles to wrap up with due to his size. There's a couple people that are coming on my list that you could say that about, where they're over aggressive as a tackler and they struggle to wrap up. The reason that I am a bit more concerned about it with McDuffie is because of the lack of size, where it's like, oh, can you just not wrap up because you're too tiny? Like, is that where we're at? Or is this just like a kind of an Olay type thing where we're being a little lazy or, protecting yourself for the NFL? I don't know, but I think he's a perfect slot corner. Like, if you're drafting McDuffie and you're like, I want him to be a slot corner, he's going to, overperform expectations there. I think he's going to be excellent as a slot corner in the NFL. I think there's doubts outside of that for me. He only played 17.8% of snaps in man coverage in 2021, which is one of the lower percentages of anyone that you'll see on this list. So that would be something that would concern me if I'm trying to put him on the outside.
All right. Cody says, I'm not as high on McDuffie. He's my number 5 as well and is the worst of the potential first-round corners for me. Dibes, I know you're on board with that. Talk to me about Trent McDuffie. And you're muted. Drink.
I like that.
So I fully agree with that, Cody. Trent McDuffie is like one of the biggest risers over the last month. I've always seen him as like a second round guy, but we've seen him lately as being maybe even top 15 mocked across multiple different national sites. For me, he's got great versatility positives. I think he's going to be just awesome on special teams. This is a guy who always has a knack for being around the football. He's got great quickness, incredible feet. I think twitchy is like the word to describe Trent McDuffie when you watch this guy on tape. He's against the pass, he's allowed 16 catches from 36 targets for 11 yards with no scores and 5 pass breakups this past season. So, I mean, I fully agree with exactly what Mark said. If you're taking this guy in the top 20 to be a slot corner, good for you. I'm biased. I'm an Eagles fan. I'm looking for an outside corner. That is no, absolutely not. Value-wise, you do not take a slot corner that high in this draft. And I don't know how high his ceiling would be because clearly he doesn't have elite size. He doesn't have good frame. He doesn't have good length. You see him standing at 5'11". He's clearly going to struggle with disrupting, the high point of the catch against bigger receivers wherever he is at the next level. I agree, Mark. I think his most likely position is starting in the slot. So getting this guy in the top 20 is absolutely crazy. I think a day 2 pick is good. I think he's right there with Roger Mccreery being in that probably high to mid second round area. From the jump when I first started hearing about these top 15, top 20 mocks for Trent McDuffie, I was like, are you out of your mind? I never bought it ever. And I still think that's the case.
Trent McDuffie and Roger Mccreery should never be mentioned in the same breath. That's slander. That is Trent McDuffie slander, and I won't stand for it.
Dude.
I'm going to talk about McDuffie in a little bit.
All right,
I'm higher on him than you guys are. Maybe we'll pick a fight about it. But my cornerback 5 is going to be Cair Elam out of Florida. Had 29 tackles, 1 interception, 5 passes defensed in 2021. Turned in an 8.63 relative athletic score. He ran a 4.39 40, but he only had average agility scores, so that brought him down some. He's a 4-star prospect who comes from an NFL pedigree. He's the son of Abraham Elam, the nephew of Matt Elam. And so if you're into that kind of thing, that the NFL's in his blood. He is a very physical corner who thrives in press coverage. As you see from his 40, he's got good top speed once he's able to turn and run, but he's kind of clunky in and out of those transitions. And I think that's where you see his poor agility scores come into play. He will struggle against quicker wide receivers if they get off of his press. That said, it's pretty hard to get off of his press. Now, I will say there's a fine line between being physical and being grabby, and I think he crosses it, and I think he gets away with it at times, a lot of times. And I don't think he's going to at the NFL level. NFL receivers are going to do a better job of putting his grabbiness on display. They know how to sell that. They can get off the physicalness of his press, and then you're going to see the jersey being grabbed. And so I do think that penalties could be a big issue for him early on in his career. That said, if he carries through that, I think he could be a really good press man corner. He's got some experience in off coverage. You don't want to, that doesn't play to his strength. He's not the best tackler. He has improved in that area. But if you want a guy that's going to be physical, that's going to get up on the line and punch you in the mouth, I think Elam is your guy.
Yeah. Have you ever evaluated a corner that you feel like is as grabby as Cair Elam?
I remember last year that I said JC Horn was pretty grabby, but not like Elam is way worse in terms of grabbiness.
Like, it's crazy. I saw one thing. If you like, a lot of the time I'll just search out players' names just to see, like, some people have fun stats that you don't get on a normal scouting report or you don't get watching tape. So I searched some things out on Twitter, and there was like a meme about, like, it was like at like some camp, and it was a wide receiver and a cornerback. And it was like so dumb because, like, this isn't real football, so they shouldn't teach us at a camp. But they were like playing press, and the cornerback like picks him up and like drives him into the ground, like, and like spears him like he's Edge in WWE. And like it's so funny. And someone's like, Cair Elam's strategy, like, and it is very much just like he'll just maul you at the line. He's the guy I have at number 4. I think Dives has him at number 4 as well. He's 6'2", 191, 4.39, 40 time average agility. It is funny sometimes when Shane says things and it's like exactly the same words I had in my notes. Like, I had the 40 time with average agility, and it's exactly how he said it. Weird. But and I also had the NFL pedigree thing here, and something just funny that I noticed. Doesn't it feel like a higher percentage of D-backs have NFL pedigree than any other position? Like, it feels like we see this all the time with DBs. Surtain, JC Horn, I guess Joe Horn. It's a little different because he was a receiver. But most of the time, it feels like these DBs have parents or brothers or whatever that are also DBs. And then, like, the Mccreery twins are obviously in the league together. Like, it does feel like that happens.
Makes you wonder what would have happened if Archie Manning played cornerback.
That's true. But moving on, if Shane's going to be the RAS guy and steal the RAS scores from me, I got to stay on my corner as the high school prospect star rankings guy. So Cair Elam, he was a 4-star prospect. He was the number 6 corner, the number 1 out of Florida, number 48 overall prospect. Coming out of high school, he was a 3-year contributor because of that, because he was such a high recruit coming in. 5 picks and 20 passes broken up in his career on a ton of snaps. Has experience in man and zone. But like we said, he's definitely a press man guy. Good play recognition, aggressive against the run. But like we said, he's incredibly grabby. It drew a lot of flags in the SEC. I believe 7 in conference play. 7. And he's going to get even more if he doesn't change something in the NFL. So that's something where, you hope that he can adjust that. I think a lot of the time I would say, that's a positive because he's playing physical. And I like my corners to be a little arrogant, a little cocky, a little physical, a little, in your face about it. He, like you said, there's a fine line with grabby and, it harming your team with him doing it. And in college, it doesn't hurt you as bad because PI is 15 yards no matter what. It's not spot of the foul. You would hope that in the NFL he realizes that he can't be doing that 30 yards down the field, or else that's going to get his team killed.
Yeah. We got Cody says, Elam is the most underrated corner in this draft for me. Could be the best one when it's all said and done. Rufus says, I think Elam's going to be good. It's going to be like Al Harris all over again.
Al Harris! Oh, God.
That's a good one.
That guy was brutal, man. Oh, no. That's true, though. That's nailed it.
Is it McDuffie time, Shane?
No, I'm up. I didn't get to talk about
Oh, my bad.
Ives is up. Just because you stole his notes and his rankings doesn't mean he gets segments to talk. And don't think I don't notice you trying to say I'm stealing that relative athletic score. Like
no. I wasn't saying that you stole it. What I was saying was when I have it in my notes and then you say it, I'm like, well, I'm not going to repeat what Shane said. So that's what I was joking because I know no one's going to be looking up the high school prospect rankings like me. I'm a sicko with that.
To be fair, I have the prospect rankings for every guy left on this list, but I won't say them out of respect for you.
You better.
I'll leave them for you.
You better not.
Okay, Dibes, you're up with Elam.
Yeah,
tell us what you see here.
Real quick, I love this kid. Absolutely love this kid. I think I agree with what Cody said. I think this guy has pretty legit ceiling. Obviously, he needs to be coached up a little bit, but his closing speed, his length, his speed, his fluid hips, his measurables, his instincts, all of that are off the charts. You know, like he's almost a complete package. He's almost a complete package in what you want with that length as an outside corner. And I love him, man. If he's there at 18 as an Eagles fan, there's definitely going to be a discussion there against the pass. 18 catches, 33 targets, 165 yards last year. In his career, he has 6 interceptions and 20 passes defended. And 3 of those interceptions came in 2019, but he had 11 deflections last year. So you're clearly projecting this guy to be an outside corner. I think it's going to work. And I think I love this kid a lot. He's really high on my board. I have a top 20 draft on this guy. I think he's awesome.
I have him ranked right outside of the first round. I didn't mention that when I talked about him. So I think I had him exactly at 33. So I had him as the first player outside of the first round.
I think in a normal year, if this draft wasn't so deep at this cornerback position, like he'd probably be like top 20. He's that good.
That's fair.
All right. Mark asked if it was time for Trent Mcduffie. It is not time for Trent Mcduffie. Because
oh my God. Are you serious?
Andrew Booth Jr.
What are we doing here?
Booth had 37 tackles, 3 interceptions, 5 passes defensed in 2021. He did have stars as a recruit, but I won't tell you how many. I'll leave that for Mark. He played
all 5 of them.
He had 5 of them. There we go. He played the most snaps among ACC cornerbacks, 581, without surrendering a 20-plus yard catch. So does not give up explosive plays. He's got quick feet. It lets him mirror wide receivers well in man coverage. He also played a lot of off coverage with his eyes in the backfield. I think in zone coverage, he can improve his spatial awareness to become a better defender. I don't think he was necessarily the best at feeling out routes, realizing how much ground he could cover. I thought he left some holes in his zone that I think more reps and more time will kind of help that to come along. That said, he attacks the ball in the air, and he does a great job tracking the ball and high pointing it. He goes up 50-50 balls or not 50-50 balls. That receiver doesn't have a 50% chance to catch it. Booth loves to tackle. He wants to hit you hard, which does lead to some missed tackles, but it also leads to some of those highlight reel hits. It leads to some fumbles. Contrary, or I guess not contrary is not the right word, but we just talked about Elam and his penalty issues. Booth was rarely penalized in college. He plays clean. You don't have to worry about him giving up explosive plays or big penalties. He is an excellent run defender. He is great at, you see corners coming in and you got that guard pulling or whatever, and corners are kind of scared to take that out. Like, he loves to blow up those lead blockers and force runs back inside. I think he can play in the slot. I think he can play outside. He doesn't really have any major red flags when it comes to scheme restrictions. Man, zone, inside, outside. I think Booth can do it all. Would comfortably take this guy in the top 20 of the draft. I think he is a really good and a really clean prospect.
We'll talk about him.
Yeah, we're gonna get there. I'm blown away, Shane. I'm blown away.
All right.
Dives upset. I thought I was the Andrew Booth guy, but Dives is upset. I
wasn't sure if Dives was coming back.
I had to make a drink. I don't work tomorrow, so I'm enjoying
All right.
it.
Well, we are on to our top three. So, Dives, why don't you lead us off here with your corner three and just work some of that anger out live on air?
For me, it's Derek Stingley. He might be my number 3 cornerback in this class, but I would argue he's probably a top 5 talent in this class. That's how much potential this guy has. He's got great athleticism. We saw in his pro day, incredibly fluid, can change directions on a dime, amazing ball skills, one of the best ball hawks in this entire draft. Great football IQ. His hands, length, jumping ability are elite. But you guys already know where this is headed. His man coverage is a little iffy against weaker receivers. There's a lot of tape on him being great, but when he's lined up against great receivers, he gets chewed up a little bit. That's what we have seen. And, a team that's going to be taking a top 15, top 20 waiver on this guy for banking on performance from 2.5 years ago, that's a major weakness. And that cannot be ignored. So from a physical standpoint, from a skill standpoint, from a talent standpoint, it's all there. Just all the football teams, I think, have to be doing their homework on this kid and seeing where he's at right now. Because if you were to take him, if the draft was in 2019, he'd be probably a number 1 pick. That's how good he was.
After 2019, I mean, he was pretty much considered to be the number 1 overall pick when he was
he?
Yeah,
and he was 18 years old, right? Like, it's crazy. But this guy, pound for pound, is one of the most talented guys in this entire draft.
Yeah, Cody says Stingley's my best corner in the draft. Watch the 2019 tape. Enough said, his pro day was icing on the cake.
Yeah, I like Stingley a lot. I mean, Derek Stingley, there's a reason why he was projected to be the number 1 pick as a cornerback at age 18. 6'1", 190. He only played 3 games in 2021, only 7 in 2020. He's being ranked highly because he looked like the best defensive player in the country on the best team ever in 2019 on LSU, because he was a 5-star recruit and the 3rd overall ranked player in the 2019 recruiting class, and also because his 2019 tape is the best single season of tape you will ever find of a corner at the highest level of competition against great quarterbacks and great receivers at 18 years old. 6 picks in 2019, never had another one after that. Great press corner, disruptive at the line of scrimmage. But players like Devonta, they have roasted Stingley. Like you said, Dives, great receivers definitely had their way with him a couple times. But he killed it at his pro day. 4.37 40 time, 8.97 RAS, and it's that high because of the long field speed, and it's not higher because the shuttle numbers were average. So that's, you can build that into some of the concerns. And it is hard to tell if 2019, maybe it was not, I'm not going to say fluky because he was incredible, but maybe he got a little bit of turnover luck with getting 6 interceptions, or if 2020 and 2021 were just bad luck and injury riddled and never got going. And Coach O, it was a mess. LSU in general has been a mess the last 2 years. It's, that there's a reason why they won the national championship and fired the head coach less than 2 years later, because it was a mess the last 2 years. So it is hard not to be a bit nervous about, lower body leg injuries at a position where speed is so important. And as a guy whose long strides and long field speed is such a big part of the profile, but he's an alpha dog. Like, this is the guy who he thinks he's the best corner in this draft, 100%. But yeah, medicals and off the field drive, whatever you want to say, stuff that I don't generally factor in too much in terms of just the last 2 years not playing a lot and not showing a ton of it just didn't seem like he was all in last year. If you're watching the tape, it doesn't seem like he's the same aggressive type of guy. So, you're just hoping that that's something that he gets to the NFL and it washes away.
It reminds you of another LSU young man kind of just going through the motions in college. I don't know. I'm not just saying.
It probably didn't hurt that he was practicing against Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase in 2019. Probably didn't hurt his development at all.
Terrace Marshall to be for a big guy to go against.
Terrace Marshall.
Yeah, they had so many guys. It's ridiculous.
All right, we are to my CB3, and so it is finally time to talk about Trent McDuffie. He is my corner 3 in the class out of Washington, has 35 tackles, a sack, and 6 passes defensed in 2021. And he only has 2 interceptions in 3 seasons, which is something, again, is that bad luck? Is it bad ball skills? But he had a 9.49 relative athletic score. He ran a 4.44 40. Good athleticism. He's small at 5'10", 193. He's got 29 3/4 inch arms. He was a 4-star prospect, a former wide receiver in high school. He was a 3-year starter at Washington. Washington used him in a lot of off coverage. And so they would have Gordon in a press bail. They would have on the other side McDuffie in off coverage. When he was up on the line, he used a lot of bail techniques, not even necessarily press bail. He just bailed at the snap, disguising coverages. McDuffie is elite in zone coverage. He passes routes off well. He understands his zone in relation to other players, how it's being threatened, how to utilize leverage against wide receivers. His side of the field was often ignored by quarterbacks. So you don't see a lot of interception, pass deflection numbers, but he has good ball skills, going back to him being a wide receiver in high school. He's a good tackler. He loves to come up and hit. Again, Washington has that philosophy. If you don't tackle, you don't play. And so McDuffie loves to go tackle. He has a top-notch football IQ. And so the elephant in the room is his arm length, his wingspan. 5th percentile arm length, 9th percentile wingspan. I think McDuffie can play outside corner in the NFL, particularly in a cover 2, a quarters type scheme. I think he can do it. And so that's why I wouldn't take him that high if I didn't. That said, if he can't hang outside, I think he's going to be a really good slot cornerback. And I know he hasn't played it, but to be honest, I think his best usage, if you can't put him outside, would be at safety. I think he would be an elite safety in the NFL. And so I think he's got that profile. If I'm the Eagles, if McDuffie's there at 15, I would take him. And the Eagles need an outside corner. They need a safety. I'm so confident that McDuffie will excel at one of those positions. I really like the player. Obviously, I wouldn't take him ahead of my other 2 guys on the list, but I wouldn't have any qualms about the size. I know it's like Eagles fans have the double whammy here of Avonte Maddox, T-Rex arms, and Sidney Jones coming from Washington. It's like all of that in one player for them. But I love McDuffie. I will stand on the McDuffie hill. I think he's going to be a really good player in the league.
This is like one of those drafts where like Eagles take Malik Willis at 15 and Trent McDuffie at 18, and Shane's over here
I
like
will be ecstatic.
That would upset me. I mean, Trent McDuffie in the first round would upset me. It would upset me. That's a slot corner right there. But whatever.
Yeah, Avonte was great. Avonte's terrific. They just signed him.
Oh, I'm not putting McDuffie in the slot. I'm playing him outside. I think he's going to be fine outside.
All right.
All right. Let's move on to somebody that won't upset Mark. Mark, tell me about your cornerback number 2.
I might get upset because the doubting of this man by you, Shane, is enough to upset me. No, I'm joking. But I'm higher on this guy than consensus. I love Andrew Booth Jr. This is the guy who I would say out of the entire draft process has risen the most for me, and I've fallen in love with the most in terms of an Eagles fit. He's an absolute dog. He plays with the confidence and the cockiness and the arrogance of some of what I would want out of my top corner. He's similar to Sauce, where he thinks he's the best player on the field. I think all 4 of the top corners on the list kind of play like that. In Sauce, Booth, Stingley, and Elam. Feisty playmaker, lengthy arms. He's also jacked, 6 foot, 194, 5-star prospect out of high school, number 2 cornerback out of high school behind Stingley. He was a 2-year starter at Clemson in 2 years where Clemson's defense was excellent. In 2020, he had 2 picks with 4 passes broken up and a sack. In 2021, he had 3 picks with 5 passes broken up. He makes some highlight reel interceptions, and even though he's only 6 foot, he can cover big outside corners. It doesn't seem like he has trouble with any sort of size. And he's great in press. He can play man or zone. He's got loose hips, great technique, some of the best footwork you could ever see in a corner, in my opinion. He wasn't targeted often last year, and when he was, he rarely gave up big plays. Like you said, Shane, he played the most snaps among ACC cornerbacks without surrendering a 20-plus yard catch. He was also the highest rated corner in the ACC by PFF at 80 in press coverage. He only gave up 29 catches on 46 targets for 312 yards. And on top of that, he was so good against the run. He flies to the ball because he's a natural playmaker with great instincts. A lot of people think he's over aggressive, and he definitely has missed a couple tackles, but I love to see it because I think it's so rare in cornerbacks. And I think with his strength and his length, I don't think that it's something where I'm like, oh, I don't think he can make those tackles. I think it was just a case where he was a little too aggressive a couple times, a bit off more than he can chew, and came in at a weird angle. But and it seems like he had one bad game against NC State. He gave up 2 touchdowns. And if you were to take that out, his numbers in terms of like the passer rating and all that stuff would be absolutely incredible. It seems like he just kind of got crossed up a couple times in a rough game for him. And I think that's why people think he could struggle against tiny, shifty receivers because of that game. I don't think that that's like a long-term issue, and it's not something that I saw multiple times on tape. So I think Andrew Booth is the type of guy where this is, you said you would take McDuffie if he's at 15. Andrew Booth is a guy where, I'm going to be pounding the table at 15 and 18, but it seems like he's going in the 20s. It seems like he's not a 15 or 18th type of pick. So I don't know how. I have him ranked in my top 8 overall.
Just want to say for the record, Rufus agrees with me on the greatness of McDuffie. So got to put that out there.
The greatness
Time out. Damn, just like pulling for Landon Dickerson last year, I was the one that was high on Dickerson. I had to talk Shane into liking the pick that time. But to be fair, he liked Creed Humphrey.
He was on his boy.
Who ended up being much better. But I was the Landon Dickerson guy. Come on, Rufus.
That's hard. Different positions. I mean, maybe they want Dickerson to be a center down the road. If so, then Creed Humphrey would have been a better pick. But yeah, they both had great first years.
You don't think Creed could have been a guard, Humphrey?
I do.
Yeah, he probably could have.
I do.
Yeah, I think they're all. I think both of them are probably versatile, guard or center.
Yeah. All right. So this is my number 2. Elite. I agree, Mark. I have no idea how this guy's not like a top 15 pick. He's kind of fallen. I think he was hurt during the combine or something along those lines. So he's kind of like behind the beat there with a lot of these other guys that are skyrocketing up the draft boards. But Andrew Booth Jr. just does it all. I mean, he's got, from a measurement standpoint, great athleticism, size, length, instincts, his anticipation. He's one of the elite playmakers in this entire position here. So have you seen his interceptions? The dude makes like one-handed catch, like interceptions. It's unbelievable.
Philly would love this dude.
I know. It's crazy. God. It's crazy. Like for weaknesses, he just needs to add strength. This is a top 15, top 20 pick, and a no-brainer for the Eagles, man. I just don't understand the McDuffie thing. I don't, especially when you're talking about this guy. I'm sorry, Shane. It's just no.
So I get the McDuffie thing. Like I understand why people like him. I have him 34th, so it's not like I'm like saying, oh, he's not a top. I think I have him as a high second rounder. So I'm saying I see the upside. But like you said, when it comes to like compared to Booth and Stingley, I struggle with him being in this tier because I do think that Sauce, Booth, and Stingley. I wouldn't have a problem with how anyone ranks any of these three with Sauce, Booth, and Stingley. You could rank those any way for me, and I could understand because I think all three have such elite traits. But McDuffie would definitely be right outside of that. I have him with like Elam, Mccreery, Gordon, and all in that kind of tier.
Yeah, I would say my top four are together, and then a gap to Elam.
And also, just to throw a bone here to Shane, I think more people are on Shane's side than me and Dives. Like I think it's more consensus that McDuffie's above Booth. Honestly, just judging off of listening to the pods I listen to, reading the stuff I don't get it.
I don't understand why his stock is dropping. I don't.
I think there's a lot of that this year. We'll find out how much of it's smokescreen and how much of it's real, obviously.
I will say, I think there's a lot of variance in how people are viewed this year, all going back to COVID. You had the COVID interrupted season. It messes up tape for guys. I think starting next year, you'll start to get less craziness in terms of orders from people. I just think, honestly, it's still an after effect from COVID and what that did to game tape from last year. Because the growth from that year to the draft year is big for people, for summer scouting and things like that. It's just not available for a lot of these guys.
So Cody has a comment here where he says he has Stingley 1, Booth 2, and Gardner 3. And I just said you can rank those three however you're going to rank them. The reason I think that Sauce is the top guy, and we'll get to all the reasons.
Hey, spoiler alert. People are going to stop listening.
Maybe I have, I'm trying to find. Maybe I have Darian Kendrick as my number one guy, and I left Sauce off the top 10. But I just think that Sauce is the safest prospect in the draft. So with Stingley and Booth, there are some concerns there that I think other people are maybe overrating a little bit, but there are definitely concerns. I don't think there is concerns with Sauce, but I can understand someone telling me why they think Booth and Stingley's upside is higher.
So let me talk about Stingley because he's my CB2.
You love Stingley.
I love Stingley. I especially love his stats from 2021. 8 tackles in 2021. He only played 3 games.
He really James Hardened it. I can appreciate it.
Now, he did have 6 interceptions and 15 passes defensed as a freshman in 2019. He had an 8.98 relative athletic score. His pro day was really good in terms of his running and his agility drills. He was a 5-star recruit, number 1 ranked cornerback coming out of high school, made immediate impact as a true freshman in the SEC, playing against the best of the best. He put up the best season of tape that you're ever going to see from a cornerback. In 2020, he only played in 7 games. There was COVID. There was a non-COVID illness. There was an ankle injury. Then he played in 3 games in 2021 before shutting it down to have surgery on his foot. He had the Linz-Frank injury. If he could have come out after 2019, he would have gone number 1 overall. His tape was that good. He is great in press coverage. He's got a strong punch at the line. He's able to disrupt the flow of receivers' routes. He's good in zone coverage. He understands leverage. He's really good at reading the quarterback's eyes. He's got top-notch ball skills. Again, as evidence, 6 interceptions, 15 passes defensed as a freshman in 2019. Teams saw this 18-year-old kid, and they said, we're going to test him, and it never went well for them. He plays like a wide receiver when the ball's in the air. He swipes at the ball if the receiver's making the catch. He's got a good ability to dislodge those passes if he can't intercept them. He's a good tackler. He understands how to be a force player in the running game. Now, the concern for him is he's just a different player in 2019 when LSU was competing for a national title than he was in 2020 and 2021. LSU was kind of in shambles. We've talked about that. So there's concerns about his ability to handle playing for a team who's struggling, which are the teams that are at the top of the NFL draft. So it does give you a little bit of pause. He's a very intelligent player. If he shows up and he goes to work, I think he's going to be really good. The other thing is just injuries. He's suffered with injuries. He's had the ankle injury, the Lisfranc injury. Guys that are often injured in college often do not get better when they go to the NFL and they're playing against bigger, faster, stronger guys. And so if you need a cornerback and you pass on Stingley, it is because of medical red flags or the concern of, him not being able to buckle down and handle the NFL. On the field, there's no issues. It's all about how you evaluate his personality, his work ethic, and how you evaluate the injuries. Now, I try not to take medical red flags into account too much in my rankings because I don't have access to that information. Yeah. But I would have a medical red flag on him pending a medical staff. But in terms of talent, he's the most talented corner in the draft. I got him number 2, though, because of a myriad of other reasons that we'll get to here in just a minute when we talk about our consensus number 1.
He's medically cleared, right? I thought that was all squashed, right?
Yeah, because he had his pro day and he ran like a 4.3 40 and all.
Yeah, it was a beast.
Yeah, it's just concerns about recurring injuries, things like that.
Yeah, because he's had multiple issues crop up. It wasn't just one issue. It's been a couple times. So that is why it's kind of always going to be tough.
The Linsfranc injury is generally a pretty devastating injury for receivers and cornerbacks. Now his testing numbers were really good, but it'd still be something you'd want to watch.
Didn't Ben have a Linsfranc injury?
It is very Ben Simmons.
LSU, Linsfranc. Oh my God, that scares the crap out of me. Oh my God.
All right, let's get to our consensus number 1. We all have this guy number 1. It is Ahmed Sauce Gardner out of Cincinnati. Had 40 tackles, 3 sacks, 1 forced fumble, 3 interceptions, and 4 passes defensed in 2021. He has 9 interceptions and 18 passes defensed in 3 years. He ran a 4.41 40 at 6'2", 190 pounds. He was 160 pounds out of high school, and he gained 30 pounds at Cincinnati. I gained 30 pounds in college too, but it was different. But it didn't make me a better athlete. He became a star as a true freshman. He was targeted just 31 times this year, and he gave up 8 catches for 60 yards. Like, Eagles cornerbacks give that up in the first half of games. So he had the most snaps in press coverage this season at 321. He disrupts timing. He smothers wide receivers. Alternatively, he's got a really good press trail technique too, which is not something I've talked about with any other corner so far. He does get grabby, which could lead to flags. Cody asked how long till he gives up his first TD in the NFL. So there's the stat that he never gave up a touchdown. And so he was asked, I think it was at the Combine, how's he going to react when he gives up a touchdown in the NFL? And his response was, I don't plan on giving one up. I love that. I mean, you're going to give up a touchdown.
I love the alpha. I love that mentality, man. Love the Mamba mentality.
Absolutely love it. And I mean, he's good in zone too. Like his length shrinks down throwing windows. He does a great job reading concepts and reacting to them. He loves to bait throws in zone coverage, and he's able to make plays that other guys just can't with his burst and with his length. He's got smooth transitions when he turns to run, especially for a guy that's 6'2". I guess the biggest negative I would say is he's not the most consistent tackler, and he tends to give up yards after contact in the running game. He's getting knocked backwards as he brings a guy down. But I think he's going to thrive in a man or a zone scheme. Personally, I like him better in a zone scheme, but if you need a corner, just take this guy. He's going to be great. What do you guys have on Sauce?
Mark, you want to go?
Yeah, sure. I was trying to pull up this tweet because I like to say, the people who I love in the draft, my guys, I call them my draft children, generally. The successful ones are the ones that I talk about, like Patrick Mahomes, and I used to talk about Deshaun Watson. I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about him as a draft child anymore. We might have to disown him. But in terms of, I definitely, that's how I find, my favorite players in the league. And Sauce Gardner has been a guy that I have tweeted about a lot. And I have been talking about a lot. I think during the season last year, me and Shane, we do final thoughts every show. And I used a lot of them on just guys in the NFL draft coming up that I liked, and, guys that I was liking just based off of watching college football. And I definitely talked about Sauce Gardner. I'm not going to go back and find the tape to see where it was, but here's a tweet from when it was still controversial to like Sauce Gardner. in early December or November. A couple of those takes I don't think fly anymore with Carson Strong over Sam Howell or David Bell over the Ohio State wide receivers. But I had Sauce Gardner over Derek Stingley before it was cool. And then now everyone's got Sauce Gardner over Derek Stingley as the number one corner. So I really do feel like I got in on the ground floor and, when it was possible for the Eagles to get him at 15. And then now that's a pipe dream. We're going to have to trade up if they want any shot at Sauce. But there's so many things you could say. I mean, 3-year starter with 3 picks in each of his 3 years. He was the defensive player of the year for his conference, first team All-American with number 1 votes at the position, 5 passes broken up in 11 games in 2021. And before the college football playoff that Cincinnati played in against Alabama, Kirk Herbstreit, a big name in college football, went on College Game Day and said, there is not a cornerback in college football or the NFL that can defend Jameson Williams. He said it like no matter what, he was like, I don't care if you're Sauce Gardner, I don't care if you're Jalen Ramsey, you're going to have to double team Jameson Williams. Cincinnati disagreed. They let Sauce defend him. He shut him down for 2 targets for 1 catch and -1 yard against Sauce. Never gave up a TD in his 3 years at Cincinnati. Only gave up 131 yards this season. Did not allow 20 yards in a game. 0.0 passer rating in single coverage. The lowest yards allowed per snap in the country. He's just an absolute dog. I mean, you look at the chain in the tweet right here. The famous chain now that of course, it's not working. I can't get it all the way. But he's got the Sauce chain, by the way. Some of the
that's pretty cool.
The coolest chain I've ever seen, like
that's
a player
cool. Like
with the dripping sauce. It's unbelievable. But he's exactly what I want in like the face of my defense, the face of my corner. He's a Jalen Ramsey level prospect to me in terms of on the field and a little bit of off the field. Hopefully, a little bit more controlled than Jalen Ramsey, but this is as close to a clean, safe lock of a prospect than you usually ever get. I think he's the safest in the entire NFL draft. I have him number 3 overall on my board. You could talk me into putting him number 2 or number 1, honestly, but the reason he's not is those guys have a little bit higher of upside, but he's got the highest floor in this draft with his pterodactyl arms and natural instincts when it comes to football. The guy is just unbelievable, and he's the type of guy. There's only 3 players in this draft class that I would want the Eagles to move up and go and get. He's on that list.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. I mean, this guy is my number 4 prospect in the entire draft. You saw a video, like his hips are unbelievable. Like that is elite kind of stuff that you saw. His fluid hips. Passer rating allowed of 35.3 since 2019. His change of direction, his anticipation, his timing when the ball is snapped is like Asante Samuel. Like he just closes so fast on the ball. He's a playmaker against the run. He reads plays before they happen. I agree, Mark. This is probably arguably the most safest pick in this entire draft here. And there's really not many weaknesses. I mean, he had a history of being a little grabby. He only had 2 penalties last year. He's great. I mean, he's right there. It's like Kyle Hamilton and a couple of edge rushers and then Ahmad Sauce Gardner. Love this kid.
Shane, where do you have him overall?
I haven't finalized all my stuff yet, but he'll definitely be top 10. He'll probably be one of my top 5 guys as well. Comparing to last year's guys, if he was in there with Surtain and Horn, where would he rank among those guys for you?
How about this?
Easy higher.
I think Surtain would have ranked 4th on my list, and I really liked Surtain.
Okay, yeah, I'm with you guys. He would have been CB1 for me last year as well.
I would honestly. All right, here's a hot take. I'd probably put Surtain over Stingley. I would do that. Surtain has all the resume there. Unlike he's like the anti Derek Stingley. I'd probably go obviously over JC Horn. That's no question. I think the next question is where does Andrew Booth rank in that? And I think he does rank in that.
I just searched our Discord for hot take to see some of the things I've said hot take about over the last few months.
But in terms of where Surtain would rank, I had Surtain really high last year. I would have him behind Booth. I would have him behind Stingley. Would you have it? Where would Surtain or Stingley, Shane? Where I know you liked both. You liked Surtain a lot last year. You liked.
I'm ready to do this right now. Let's go.
That'd be really tough.
Yeah.
If I can guarantee health, I'm going Stingley. But knowing what I know,
safer,
but knowing what I know about both,
that's all in
I
play.
Surtain.
Yeah, that's all in play.
I would take the chance on Stingley, I think. I like Surtain a lot, but I that's how high I am on Stingley this year. Like, and I don't know if I don't know if that came across when I was talking about him, because I did talk about all the negatives, but I just want to emphasize, like, as much as I like Sauce, as much as I like Booth, I have Stingley third. I think some people will look at that and think I'm being too low on Stingley. I have him 9 overall, and I think he's the 2019 tape is better than you'll ever see.
Guys, I think we just found our next podcast idea. That sounds really fun.
Oh, ranking, sure, that's fun. Yeah.
I mean, yeah. So I think I would put hands down Gardner number 1. I would probably put Booth. I'd probably go Surtain number 2, Booth number 3. I'd probably go Stingley number 4. Yeah, it doesn't feel right. Yeah, anyway, that's where I'm at right now.
If you ever want to exercise in fun, search your own Twitter for the words hot take. I'm down a rabbit hole now.
Oh no. All
right, well, we better get out of here. We've gone an hour and 20 minutes on our bonus content top 10 cornerbacks. Before we get out of here, Dives, you got any final thoughts for us?
No, it's a really good group. Like I said, this is right there with edge. I really want the Eagles to trade up for a corner just to lock it in, because I am nervous, incredibly nervous, that there's not going to be one available. Steven Nelson's now gone. They need an outside corner. And I think the ones in the top of this draft are really good. But once you get past round 1, there's a major drop-off. Same for edge. You know, after you get past that Jermaine Johnson, Trey Walker, George Karlaftis range, there's a major drop-off. So for me, lock it in, cornerback, edge. After that, we'll deal with linebacker when it happens. We'll deal with maybe possibly tight end or whatever. It doesn't matter. But for me, those are the top 2 positions. Cornerback, I think, is a great group in this draft, and I hope the Eagles get one.
All right. Mark, how about you? You got any final thoughts for us?
Yeah, I mean, the 2 first-round picks better be a corner, an edge, or a receiver. Like, they better be 2 of those 3 things, in my opinion. And I think the corner is the thing that I would prioritize first on that list. For the reason Dive said, I think that top 3 for me of Sauce Gardner, Andrew Booth, and Derek Stingley is so strong. And I think getting one of those 3 would be such an important step for this defense, as opposed to, you know, taking a bit of a gamble on a guy that maybe isn't an outside guy, or maybe, you know, has a higher upside, but, you know, a Tariq Woolen type in the second round. I would probably rather just go and try to address it and try to get an immediate starter, no matter what the cost is, moving up for Sauce, maybe even moving up a little bit for Booth or Stingley. But I think that would be my top kind of priority in this draft for the Eagles.
I have a question. So imagine the top 3 are gone. Stingley, Gardner, Booth are all gone. Would you go wide receiver or would you go cornerback?
Receiver, for sure.
Would you?
Yeah, because I don't think that just how my big board would break out. Yeah, I don't have another corner outside of that top 3 ranked in my first round. So I wouldn't reach down for a Cair Elam or a Trent McDuffie. I would take a Jameson Williams or a Drake London or a Treylon Burks before I would dip into that, and I would also take a Karlaftis or a Jermaine Johnson if they were available before I would dip into that. So that's where I come down on that. And that's when I would kind of dip into and start thinking about a Tariq Woolen or even a round 3 pick of a Kobe Bryant or a Josh Jobe, where Kobe Bryant, Josh Jobe, those guys, maybe they're not that exciting and maybe they're not the toolsy high upside types of guys like Tariq Woolen and Zion Mccallum and some other guys like that. But I think Kobe Bryant and Josh Jobe are both guys that can step in and play right away. Those are guys that will be rotational corners in the NFL in their first year if they land in the spot to do so, because they both have so much experience. So if the Eagles do bypass taking a first round corner for whatever reason, whether they not be there or they take players at 2 other positions, those 2 would be guys that I would very much like to see the Eagles kind of target in the 3rd and 4th round.
All right. My final thought is 2 weeks from tonight, we will be wrapping up our round 1 draft coverage, which seems crazy. All the time we've done.
Dive's going to be hammered.
Yeah, all the time we've spent doing the rankings and stuff. And we're 2 weeks away from being through the first round, which is kind of crazy. I hope you guys will all join us live. Thank you for joining us here tonight. We are going to get a few more shows in before the draft, maybe some mock drafts, big boards, maybe a My Guys podcast, some draft questions. So hit me up on Twitter. My DMs are always open. Send me your draft questions. We're going to compile them into a massive draft mailbag show. Other than that, thank you guys for joining us tonight for episode number 55 of Chalk Talk. If you enjoy what you heard on the show, and we know that you do, especially the Trent Mcduffie hype, be sure you smash that subscribe button so you don't miss the next episode. Drop us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts. You can follow us on Twitter at @halfandhalf_TPL, at Mark Henry Jr. _ and at Mr. Crockpot. So from me, from Dibes, from Mark, from the Painted Lines, we'll see you guys next time.